Environmental Advocates is Wisconsin's only nonprofit environmental law center. We work with citizens and families throughout Wisconsin on issues relating to clean air, clean water, healthy land, and healthy government. And as part of my job as a staff attorney at MEA, did I say my name? I'm Tressie Kamp. I think Forrest introduced me sufficiently. So as part of my job as a staff attorney, it's really a privilege to, actually the biggest privilege to work with those of you citizens in the room who I know, and also a privilege to work with our state level partners who are here. MEA's wheelhouse is litigation and also less formal legal and technical assistance for lobbying or legislative questions, for science and policy expertise. I'm happy to, and I will, in fact, for some of our more technical and our 151 questions, make sure that experts in the room speak up and make sure everyone knows how hard they've been working on understanding these issues. So, Midwest Environmental Advocates, and I think I was just supposed to be a couple minutes, right, so not even 10, but we were formed when two things happened. When the Department of Natural Resources secretary shifted from an independent secretary to the secretary that we know today, which is appointed by the governor. Excuse me. We were also formed as a result of the loss of what was called the Public Intervener's Office. This was part of our Department of Justice, and it afforded legal services and legal advice to the public and provided advice even when that advice might not align with the position of a particular government agency. So very often environmental attorneys and environmental experts who were able to take positions that differed from that of the Department of Natural Resources. That was lost, and our co-founders built MEA to, if not replace, to try to fill some of the gap that was left. So we provide pro bono and low-cost legal assistance to citizens and families throughout the state. So I was asked to introduce MEA. I did that. What is my role? In addition to what you think of all lawyers doing, whether you like them or not, don't tell me. One of, something I do at my job, Mary mentioned kind of the hope bubble being deflated. She's still talking to me, but that is a big part of my job, and I think I've deflated hope bubbles for too many of you in the room. You're still here, so thanks. But my job is to help start to explain some of the laws or lack of regulations that exist at our state level as they apply to large-scale livestock operations. When MEA was founded, Midwest Environmental Advocates was founded, a big part of our work was working on Clean Water Act, and specifically the water impact of end-of-pipe dischargers, so power plants, wastewater treatment facilities, etc. Not just because of any one particular event, but in large part because of a family from Kewaunee County, so northeast Wisconsin, who came to us when their well was contaminated and their child was sickened after spreading of manure and preceding runoff in the winter season. We really got pulled into agricultural issues and reviewing the sufficiency of agricultural laws and regulations when that family came to us. The mother of that family now studies the sociological impact of large-scale farming operations. That's part of her study now. So, we've tried to frame, if you can leave the room knowing one thing, whether it's run for county board. What I hope to do is, yes, I deflate hope bubbles, but I hope to send people away with a little bit of hope as well. The executive director of Midwest Environmental Advocates used to work in domestic violence, providing support to domestic violence victims. And not for all of our callers, but for too many people who reach out to us, she likens the way that those individuals have been treated to the way that domestic violence victims, to their mentality after they've experienced abuse. So I hope that people leave understanding that whether it's just questions at this point, whether it's concerns, or whether it's outright panic about something that has happened or you think is going to happen, those are valid. There are people in the room who have gone through the experiences that you are going through or may go through. So your concerns are valid, they're not twisted, they're not wrong. You just happen to be up against an industry that is fighting really hard to continue to grow and doing what they view as their job. but it's also our job to be a pillar and to be the strength on the other side of the aisle. So you're not alone, and there is hope, although it may be difficult at times. Staff attorney role, MEA intro, why are we here? One of the breakout sessions is going to be a legal related breakout session. Those state partners that I mentioned, you know who you are, I won't mention anyone by name. I welcome you to join me to provide your expertise. Anything I missed?
That's good.
Okay.
Thanks, Tressie. Yeah, and I think it's really important when she talks about deflating the hope bubbles to deflate the unrealistic hope bubbles so that we can focus on some of the ones that maybe are actually effective. And so I'm just going to keep Tressie up here a little bit because there's these new rule updates that are being implemented for eastern Wisconsin. And maybe you could just give a real brief idea of what that is and why it's being focused in eastern Wisconsin. And then maybe Kelvin will have some thoughts on why it's not being applied here or why it maybe should be applied here.
CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations, are farms of 1,000 animal units or more, not equal to the number of animals, and I'm looking at faces in the room who could repeat this 10 times faster than I can, but not equal to the number of animals. You'll hear different numbers, but 1,000 animal units can be between 700, 800, 850 cows, based on weight loosely, although there are some other factors. Those largest farms in our state have to comply with 2 layers of the cake in terms of regulations. The bottom layer is what we call NR 151, and that stands for Natural Resources, which means that's the department that has authority to implement those regulations. The top layer of that cake, which the largest farms also have to comply with, NR 243, again, Natural Resources. CAFOs have to comply with both layers of that cake. The smaller farms, 500 animal units or more, so about half the size of the CAFO threshold, technically have to comply with NR 151. I won't go into loopholes in terms of why not all of those smaller farms will be complying, but if a farm is, for example, receiving cost share dollars or government money to implement certain practices, if they have a nutrient management plan, factors like that, it's likely that they will need to be complying with the bottom layer of that cake, NR 151. And those rules are in the process of being updated. They're at the very beginning of what I believe is now a 31-step process in changing administrative code in our state. And administrative code is all of the regulations, whether it's DNR or DACCAP. NR 151 regulations are at this point being targeted to northeast Wisconsin. So you saw a map of the horseshoe of the karstic region in Wisconsin. Predominantly, the rule updates will apply in Kewaunee and Door counties, a little bit further south as well, but in northeast Wisconsin. There are a couple of reasons for that. I haven't been a scientist since undergrad and was barely a scientist then, so I'm not going to give the specifics, but maybe other panelists can. There are geological differences in the type of karst topography in northeast and southwest Wisconsin, and the DNR heard from very knowledgeable hydrogeologists and other experts in terms of the differences and how there may or may not still be groundwater contamination concerns. A biggie is that northeast Wisconsin, and you'll hear numbers for Kewaunee County specifically, a lot of the land in the northeast part of our state is already under a nutrient management plan, and that governs how and when manure is spread, and that's a simplification. But a big reason for not applying the rule updates to southwest Wisconsin is a state position that existing best management practices, so predominantly nutrient management plans, but other practices as well, are not sufficiently being implemented in southwest Wisconsin such that it's time to enact more stringent standards. So to be clear, the standards are they mostly apply to manure application. So the position is that more needs to happen with existing state standards. More land needs to be either put under nutrient management plans, or nutrient management plans need to be enforced. And once that's proven to not be sufficient to protect water quality, to protect public health, then we'll come back. I hear a couple people laughing. We'll come back to a place in the regulatory process where perhaps the more stringent requirements could begin to apply to Southwest Wisconsin.